Okay, so we're on to 10.4, and we're going to start off with estimating body weight and body composition. So determining a person's healthy body weight should include three things. So first, it should be a measurement of body mass index, which is known as BMI. Second, a measurement of body fat content, so again, body composition. And third, assess the pattern of fat distribution. So those three things should come into play when we're determining if a person's, what a person's healthy body weight is. Okay, not just one of those things, all three. And then we should define some of these terms. So underweight as having too little body fat to maintain health. Normal weight is an adequate amount of body fat. Being overweight is having a moderate amount of excess body fat. And then obesity would be having an excess amount of body fat that adversely affects health. Okay, and so before we get into calculating BMI, I wanted to quickly run through this list. This is a table from our textbook of obesity-related health conditions. And so, having an excess body fat that adversely affects health can lead to some of these things. So, for example, surgical risks, pulmonary disease and sleep disorder, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, CVD, cardiovascular disease, so coronary heart disease, stroke, bone and joint problems, gallstones, and so on and so forth. So there's a slew of other things that come along with obesity, can come along with obesity. Okay, so let's talk about body mass index, so BMI. Body mass index compares a person's weight to his or her height, and it gives an overall indication of the person's overall health. It's important, we can calculate this in one of two ways. So we can do body weight in kilograms divided by height squared in meters, okay, or, which I prefer, the second equation, body weight in pounds times 703 divided by height squared in inches. That's a little bit easier to calculate. So that's the one that we'll use. So for example, if I have an individual who is 5'3" and weighs 180 pounds, to calculate BMI, I'm first going to take the weight in pounds, so 180 times 703, and then I'm going to divide that by the individual's height in inches squared. So that's going to be, so the person's 5'3", so do 5 times 12, because there's 12 inches in a foot, to get how many inches this is, plus the 3 inches that we already know are there, and then we'll square it. Okay, and so when we do that math, hopefully you can do that on your calculators, you should come up with 31.9. So that's the BMI of this individual, and we're going to see on the next page that this BMI is in the obese range. Okay. Body mass index values between 8.5, below 18.5 or above 30 indicate increased risk of health problems. The individual is either underweight or they're going to be into an overweight obese range. Again, BMI should not be the only measure used to calculate a healthy weight. It's not accurate for children, teens, elderly, pregnant or lactating women, adults less than 5 feet tall, and those who have a higher lean body mass, so more muscle. Again, BMI should not be used alone. And BMI should not be used as the only measure to diagnose overweight and obesity. So we have to take into account the other two things here that are important. We mentioned those back on the first slide. So again, we should also be looking at body composition as well as pattern of fat distribution. Okay, so BMI alone is not enough. All right, so here is the table, and here are some values that go along with those terms that we've already talked about a couple of slides ago. So underweight would be having a body mass index less than 18.5. Okay, that is not a healthy condition. Normal weight, BMI between 18.5 and 24.9. Overweight, BMI between 25 and 29.5. And then obesity is going to be 30 and above. And so you can see that here, right? So healthy BMI, 18.5 to 24.9. overweight 25 to 29.9, and then a BMI of 30 or above is going to be obese. And again, these are based on height and body weight. Okay. Okay, you can use this table as an estimate, right? Because we don't have every single body weight on here. And so again, these would be estimated values. If you want to calculate exact BMI, you've got to go ahead and use that formula. So again, the second thing that we need to take into account when thinking about healthy weight is the amount of body fat, so body fat content. We can measure this. We'll talk about those measurements in just a second, but first, body fat can range anywhere from 2 to 70%. Body fat desirable amounts for men would be between 18 and 24%, and for women between 21 and 35%. Again, there are multiple ways to measure this. We can do underwater weighing, air displacement, that's shown here, this figure here, this bod pod. We can also do skin fold measuring, which is shown here. Bioelectric impedance analysis, which I think is shown here, a DEXA scan. All of these have a very small range of error. They're all pretty good methods. Some are more expensive than others. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just know that there are ways to measure body fat content. Probably the cheapest one would be the skin fold measurement. Again, pretty accurate. Okay, so that is body fat content. And now we're going to talk about body fat distribution. So this is the third thing that we need to take into account. So excess body fat in the upper or lower portion of the body is going to possess risk. Upper body, if you have an apple-shaped body, right? Upper body fat distribution is also called android, and it's shown here in this picture. Just because it's a male, that doesn't really mean anything, right? Male or females can display this type of obesity. Individuals who have a waist circumference higher than 40 for men, higher than 35 for women, are going to fall into this category. And again, we have kind of this upper body fat distribution, although this gentleman doesn't look obese. But in any case, so if you store fat in the upper part of your body with a waist circumference of more than 40 for men or more than 35 for women, you would fall into this category of having upper body or android obesity, which again, we commonly call apple-shaped. Individuals with this type of obesity have a higher risk of chronic diseases like CVD, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, high blood pressure, and type 2 diabetes. Okay. On the flip side, individuals who have lower body obesity, we would call this gynoid or pear-shaped obesity. They don't have a significant risk for chronic diseases. This is a typical body shape pattern for females due to estrogen and progesterone, two hormones. After menopause, estrogen levels actually fall, and they encourage abdominal fat distribution, which is kind of a shift. And individuals who have that are going to have more of an android-shaped body. Okay, so there's lots of factors that have to come in, again, to determining what a healthy body weight is for an individual. We should think about the person's weight, body mass index, their body composition, their fat distribution. Also think about age and physical development, health status, family history of obesity and weight-related diseases, and also personal feelings about one's weight. All of these things should come into play in determining a healthy weight. Okay, so the next part of the chapter, part 5, these are factors affecting body weight and affecting body composition. And so just some stats to kind of open with. Children that do not have either parent obese have a 10% chance of becoming obese. But if a child has one obese parent, that risk goes up to 40%. And if both parents are obese, the risk goes up to 80%. Okay? So we're going to talk about genetics in just a second, but from this you can see that genetics definitely plays a role. The environment also factors in, so things like food choices, activity levels, later adult behaviors are all going to influence weight. And lastly, childhood obesity increases the risk of heart disease and premature death as an adult. Okay, so let's talk about the role of genetics. And so there's really good evidence for the role of genetics in weight. So studies have been done with identical twins, and those have provided us some really good evidence. Identical twins that have been raised apart show similar weight gain patterns, even if they're in two different environments. So both in overall weight and in body fat distribution and body composition. So again, really good evidence for the genetic factor. It's been estimated that genes account for between 40 and 70% of weight differences. And so again, this would contribute to body type, metabolic rate, factors that affect hunger and satiety. Okay, here's an example. So your height is going to be determined by your genetics, and basal metabolism increases as body surface increases. And so individuals who inherit genes that cause them to grow tall are going to use more energy than shorter people even at rest. So their basal metabolic rate, their BMR, will be higher. And therefore they have an inherently easier time maintaining healthy body weight. Okay, here's another example. This has been proposed. It's a little nuanced, and there has not been a gene that has been found that's directly involved, and so it's kind of a hypothesis. Okay, so there's this proposed predisposition to obesity. It's been tagged thrifty metabolism, and so individuals have been shown to use energy efficiently, which enables them to store fat more readily and use less energy than others would use for energy consuming tasks. Okay, it's believed that this thrifty metabolism, having this ability to use energy efficiently and then store fat, at one point in evolutionary history was very beneficial, right? In hunter-gatherer days, when food was less prevalent, right? It was sparse, and so storing fat was a benefit at that point in time. But now that's not so true anymore, right? Food is much more readily available, usually. And so individuals that have this thrifty metabolism are at a disadvantage. They have a higher tendency to store fat and gain weight. Genetics hasn't changed much since that point in evolutionary history. And so, again, it's not a benefit, but it hasn't been selected against yet. Okay. Okay. There's also something called the set point theory. So again, still talking about genetics. The set point theory proposes that humans have a genetically predetermined body weight or body fat content, and that person's weight is in this, it's going to stay in this range. That's the set point, right? So an individual is going to be between 140 and 160 pounds. They can't go under, and they're probably, not going to go over unless they really overconsume. And so the hypothalamus in the brain is thought to act as a thermostat for body weight. The body will compensate for changes in energy balance and keep a person's weight within their set point. Okay, when energy intake is reduced, it's believed that thyroid hormone secretions fall, or it's been shown that thyroid hormone secretions fall, slowing BMR and conserving body weight. So when individuals restrict calories, the body's response to that is that the thyroid activity decreases, and so therefore BMR goes down, and so you don't burn energy in the same rate anymore. And when weight is lost, the body becomes more efficient at storing fat. Okay, so again, there's this, you can't get too low, you can't get too high, you have this set point. It has, however, been shown that long-term changes to diet and physical activity may change the set point. So, your genes are not your destiny. Okay. Role of the environment. Okay, so Body weight similarities among family members stem more from learned behavior than from genetics. So it's been shown that that's true. Couples and friends, when they have similar behaviors when it comes to food. This is supported by the fact, again, that our gene pool really hasn't changed much in the last 50 years, but the percent of the population globally with obesity has grown to epidemic proportions. Okay, so if you are around people who consume a lot of food, unhealthy food, what does that mean? High saturated fat, high sugar content. You're more likely to consume and behave like those people. Okay, if you have that type of food more readily available in your home, you're going to tend to go towards that kind of food. If you tend to eat out a lot, there's all those things. Those are all the environment. And so again, it has been shown that this might be more important than genetics. There are factors affecting what we eat. So I've said this already: food availability, preference, food marketing, social networks, your culture, education, lifestyle, health concerns, income. So again, your genes are not your destiny. Body weight is, there's this interplay between genes and the environment. Ooh, skipped a page. Here we go. Okay. So this table here, again, from your textbook, it's table 10.3, just a list of factors that encourage excess body fat, storage, and obesity. So again, age. Unfortunately, females have a higher tendency to store fat than males, eating a high caloric diet, not having activity, having issues with weight as a child or teen. You have an increased risk of being overweight as an adult. And then social, cultural, and behavioral factors. There are certain medications that can influence this, as well as where you live, and again, genetic characteristics. So we have time to get through 10.6. So treatment of overweight and obesity. These should be treated like any other chronic disease. Shouldn't be a short-term fix. They need to be long-term lifestyle changes. So temporary dieting is not going to work. Okay. Rate of weight loss is going to be important. A plan that encourages slow and steady weight loss of 1 to 2 pounds per week. This is more sustainable. Flexibility. You need to be able to participate in normal activities like going to parties and socializing with friends and family, adapting your individual habits and tastes. Intake, you have to make sure that you're meeting nutrient needs. You can't, eliminate total food groups. MyPlate is a great resource. Behavior modification, we're going to talk about all of these. Behavior modification, so changing behaviors that promote weight gain. And then again, overall health. Okay, so let's talk about some of these. So components to successful weight loss. So first off, individuals will need to control energy intake and make healthy food choices. Individuals should participate in regular activity, control problem behavior, so behavior modification. And then lastly, if there is disordered eating behaviors, psychological help should be sought out. Okay, so again, the first 3 are components to successful weight loss. This last one is if. Okay, so first off, unfortunately, only about 5% of people who follow commercial diet programs actually lose weight and sustain the weight loss, so keep it off. Typically, a third of the weight lost while using a weight loss program is regained within 3 to 5 years. This causes many dieters to try a multitude of different diets, and a lot of times that is yo-yo dieting. So you kind of go down in weight, you go up in weight, sometimes higher, go back down, sometimes higher. So the yo-yo dieting is not a good thing. It increases the risk of upper body fat deposition, which we know comes along with a lot of other chronic diseases. It leads to discouragement, self-esteem becomes diminished, and there can be a decline in good cholesterol, so HDL, and also immune function. So not a good thing. Okay, so control of energy intake. So in order to lose weight, an individual needs to be in a caloric deficit. Okay, when we look at fat tissue, adipose tissue, if we look at per pound, there are 3,500 kilocalories per pound. And so to lose a pound of fat a week, we need to cut calories by about that much. Now this is nuanced, and there's actually evidence coming out that says that this number may not be exact, okay, but on average, we'll use this number. So energy intake has to be decreased by 500 kilocalories a day, okay, to achieve that deficit of 3,500 kilocalories in a week. Or there could be, physical activity gets increased by 500 kilocalories a day, or the best route is to combine the two. So decrease calories and increase physical activity both at the same time. Right? Physical activity, which we're going to talk about a lot in the next chapter, is key to health, not just weight loss, but to health in general. Okay? So again, energy intake or calories during weight loss needs to be lower than energy needs. So we have to be in a calorie deficit. But we still have to provide our bodies with all of the nutrients it needs for health. So this can be kind of tricky. Again, we want to combine physical activity with reduced calorie to make sure that we're in a calorie deficit. Generally, so our textbook, gives us these numbers. These are pretty low. Generally, 1,200 kilocalories per woman and 1,800 kilocalories per day per men will allow for weight loss, but still allow these individuals to meet nutritional requirements. Depending on your activity level. If you're very active, then these numbers would have to go up because you're not only trying to meet BMR, but you're also trying to meet your activity level. So you got to be careful there. Which way is the best way to be in a calorie deficit? Low fat, low carb, high protein. There's so many different diets out there all at once. It has been shown, it's reported, that a low fat, high fiber diet has the most success in long-term studies. Now, that's not to say that that's the perfect fit for everyone. People have to kind of figure out what works for them that can be maintained and sustained, long-term. It shouldn't just be a diet, right? It should be a lifestyle change. So here's just some suggestions. If you are a dietitian, and you're working with a patient, here's some ideas for getting started to save calories. So you can save 140 calories by choosing 3 ounces of lean beef instead of 3 ounces of, fatty beef. If I come down here, you can save 45 calories by choosing 1% milk over whole milk. Okay, so kind of easy swaps here. Again, I already said this, but you should consider healthy eating a lifestyle change and not simply a weight loss plan. So dieting, doesn't work in the long term. MyPlate is a great spot to look, right? MyPlate encourages smaller portions, and it encourages, specific ratios, percentages of different food groups. Individuals who are looking to lose weight should use measuring cups and scales, at least to start. It is very easy to think that you're getting the appropriate serving size when you might be getting, double. And then again, use nutrition facts panels, but just be aware that these are built based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So it's important to remember that. And food journaling has been shown to really help people, monitoring what you're eating helps you to realize, how many calories you're consuming in a day. So tracking helps. Okay. Again, physical activity, I can't stress that enough. We're going to spend a lot of time on that in the next chapter. But regular physical activity, not just for weight loss, but it's been shown all around to improve health, self-esteem, bone mass. And here's just approximate energy costs of various activities. This is in kilocalories per kilogram. And so again, you have to convert kilograms back to, back to pounds if you want to think about it. How many kilocalories you're burning. Okay, so you'd have to take whatever your weight is in pounds divided by 2.2 to give you kilograms. You take that number times whatever the exercise is per hour to get the number of kilocalories that you would burn per your weight in an hour. Okay, so, you know, basketball, vigorous basketball, heavy aerobics, really high numbers. Calisthenics, heavy versus light. Jogging, medium versus jogging slowly, and so on and so forth. So you can see, you know, what burns a higher amount of calories. So again, physical activity is really important. And then lastly, here we go, behavior modification. So controlling problem behaviors or behavior modification techniques. The first one, which is actually shown here, chain breaking, right? So kind of separating out behaviors that occur together. And so I'm known for this, snacking while watching TV, right? Friday night movie means I'm having popcorn. And so those are kind of linked activities. If we can break those apart, you know, don't eat while you're watching TV, or, you know, while you're eating, don't have your phone in front of you watching your phone. If you can break those, you'll be more aware of what you're eating. Stimulus control, again, alter the environment to minimize stimuli for eating. So don't have certain foods in your house. If they're not there, they're not going to tempt you. Cognitive reconstruction, change the frame of mind regarding eating. So instead of overeating because you had a difficult day or you're stressed, do something else to take care of that difficult day or stress, like walking with a friend. Contingency management, so being prepared for triggers. So for example, this is a really big one, going out to eat, right? You kind of have this menu in front of you and you have a lot of not great choices and then maybe some better choices. And so having a plan, you know, looking at the menu maybe before you go will help. And then lastly, self-monitoring. And so we mentioned this before, tracking food and tracking activities. So tracking, you know, the calories that you're taking in and tracking the physical activity that you're doing, again, will help. Okay. And so again, here's just a list from our textbook of modification principles for weight loss. Okay, I won't read you all of these, but so to kind of sum it up here for weight loss maintenance, you know, you've done all these things to kind of, or your patient has done all these things, right, to lose the weight. And so now how do you keep the weight off? And so there's 4 behaviors that help individuals to sustain weight loss. So first off, eat a low-fat carbohydrate diet. I know that low carb is kind of the thing, but it's been shown that a low-fat carbohydrate diet, 25% of your diet from fats and 56% of your diet from carbs seems to work. Now, when we talk about carbs, you know, there's the good and the bad, right? Although we don't like to use those good and bad. You know, we've kind of learned which ones are better for health compared to others. So carbs that we should be eating, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Okay. Eat breakfast. So this causes the body to burn more fat throughout the day, and you are less likely to overeat if you consume breakfast. Again, studies have shown this. Self-monitoring. So again, weigh yourself regularly and also keep a food journal. And then lastly, physical activity. So again, you should have a regular exercise plan. That's going to help with maintenance. Okay, so that is the end of this part of the chapter.